In a mansion where everything glittered like gold. One woman bore 5 children for a billionaire. But none of them were his. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected love. This is not just a story, it's a lesson. Welcome to All That Glitters. Where truth shatters lies, and love, the purest kind, heals everything. The Benson mansion in Ikoyi stood tall like a king's palace, glass windows, gold trimmings, and an electric gate that hummed like royalty. Outsiders envied the billionaire and his beautiful family. Inside, however, lay truths as broken as glass. Grace, the housemaid, wiped down the marble floors in the grand hallway. She was 25, soft-spoken, dark-skinned, and gentle in spirit. Her uniform was always clean, her head always bowed, but her eyes, sharp and observing, missed nothing. She heard laughter from upstairs. It was Clarissa, Richard Benson's wife, on a video call. Grace couldn't hear the words, but the flirtatious tone was clear. She sighed. "Not again," she whispered. Clarissa had the beauty of a queen but a heart wrapped in secrets. She hardly looked at Richard anymore except during public events. Richard, on the other hand, was everything a man should be, or so it seemed. In his early 40s, tall, well-built, and soft-spoken. He worked too much and smiled too little. But whenever he came home, his youngest son, Jason, would run into his arms, shouting, "Daddy." That was the only time Richard smiled from the heart. Grace always watched those moments quietly. "Daddy's home," she whispered one evening, peeking through the kitchen window as Richard's black SUV drove in. The 5 children came down to greet him: Daniel, 17, Michelle, 16, Ethan, 14, Chloe, 12, and little Jason. A picture-perfect family. A lie waiting to explode. Clarissa stood before her walk-in closet wearing a silk robe as she powdered her face. Grace entered with a laundry basket. "I told you not to knock when I'm busy." Clarissa snapped. "I'm sorry, Ma," Grace bowed, placing the clothes gently on the shelf. Clarissa turned to her mirror, smirking. Her phone buzzed. A message from someone saved as PK flashed, "I miss you. The kids look just like me. Still pretending with your billionaire?" Grace accidentally caught the screen. Clarissa locked it quickly. "What are you looking at?" Clarissa asked sharply. "Nothing, Ma," Grace replied quietly. "Watch yourself, Grace. Curiosity is what kills poor girls like you." Grace bowed again. But in her heart, she said a quiet prayer. "Lord, open this house to truth. No one deserves betrayal, not even a man like Mr. Benson." Richard took the kids out every weekend. They went to the cinema, the beach, or even traveled to Dubai on holidays. But no matter what they did, he always noticed something odd. Michelle was the only one who liked reading like him, but she didn't share any of his features. Ethan was allergic to peanuts, something Richard's entire family line never had. Jason had blood type AB. Richard was O. He once raised the question with Clarissa, who laughed it off and said, "Baby, are you questioning science now? These children are yours. You're just stressed." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Grace brought his tea to the study. "Thank you," Richard said. She nodded, then hesitated. "Sir, forgive me, but, are you okay?" He looked up, surprised. No one had ever asked him that sincerely in months. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just feel like, something in my life is off. I can't explain it." Grace nodded softly. Sometimes, truth wears a quiet cloth. But one day, it speaks. Richard stared at her, confused but strangely comforted. "Grace, you speak like someone with more wisdom than your age." She smiled faintly. "I watch. I listen. That's all, sir." It started with a cough. Jason's cough wouldn't stop. He became weak, feverish, and pale. The doctor ran tests and gave a chilling report. Jason had a rare blood condition and needed a bone marrow transplant. Everyone in the family needed to be tested for compatibility. Clarissa panicked. Is that necessary? Can't we just buy what he needs from abroad? The doctor frowned. Madam, this is urgent. Family match gives the best survival chance. Reluctantly, Clarissa, Richard, and the siblings were tested. A week later, the results came in. Richard was called privately. Sir. I don't know how to tell you this, the doctor began. But you are not a biological match for Jason. That's possible, Richard said, confused. What about the other kids? None of them match you, sir, because you are not their biological father. Richard couldn't believe it. He returned home like a man carrying a corpse on his shoulders. Clarissa was lounging in the living room, sipping wine. We need to talk, he said. About what? She asked lazily. About how none of the 5 children I've raised are mine. Clarissa choked on her wine. What? I know everything. The test. The truth. You've been lying to me for nearly 2 decades. She stood up slowly. Richard, it's not what you think. Don't lie to me, Clarissa. There was a heavy silence. Then, Clarissa dropped the act. Her face hardened. Fine. You want the truth. They're not yours. They were never yours. But you were rich, stable, and kind. I needed security. So I gave you the illusion of a family. You should thank me for that. Grace, standing by the stairs, heard it all. Her hands trembled. Tears welled in her eyes, not for herself, but for a man who had loved blindly, truly, and had been used without mercy. Clarissa continued, What now? You want to throw me out? You want to shame the kids too? Do it. But remember, without me, you'd still be a lonely businessman with no warmth in his life. Richard stood quietly. Then he whispered, I'd rather be alone, than live with a lie. He walked past her and went upstairs. That night, the mansion was silent, except for Grace's whispered prayer, Lord, please rebuild what has been broken. Give him peace, and lead him to truth. The news spread like wildfire within the house. The children didn't understand what was going on, until Clarissa broke the silence during dinner. Your father wants a divorce, she said coldly, pushing her plate aside. Why? Daniel asked, confused. Ask him, Clarissa hissed. Richard, sitting at the head of the table, didn't respond immediately. His eyes were on Jason, the little boy still coughing softly beside Grace, who had joined them with concern. Then he spoke quietly, because everything I believed was a lie. Michelle stood up. What are you talking about? I'm not your biological father. Silence. No one breathed. Jason looked up with big eyes. But Daddy, you're my daddy. Richard's eyes watered. He got up and knelt beside Jason. I raised you. I've held you since you were a baby. I'm still your daddy. That hasn't changed. Michelle burst into tears. Mummy, tell me he's lying. Clarissa stood up, straightened her gown, and said coldly, he's not lying. You all belong to someone else. A man who didn't want you. So I gave you a better life. Daniel's fists clenched. You lied to all of us. Grace couldn't hold back anymore. She reached out and placed her hand gently on Michelle's back. Your worth doesn't change because of your past. You are loved. You still have a father. Richard looked up, eyes meeting Grace's. And in that moment, something shifted. The hospital reached out to Kenneth, the real father of the children. At first, he refused to speak to anyone. He had moved on, married, had new kids, and was now a respected pastor of a big church in Abuja. When Richard tried calling him, Kenneth's assistant answered. Pastor Kenneth is unavailable. Tell him it's about his son's life. His blood might save Jason. An hour later, Kenneth called back. His voice was dry. So, she finally told you? Yes. And now your son is dying. That's not my problem anymore. Richard's tone was calm but sharp. If you don't help that child, I'll tell the world the truth. You can kiss your church goodbye. Kenneth sighed. Fine. I'll send my blood. But don't expect a reunion. The marrow was delivered. Jason's health began to improve slowly. Richard paid the full medical bill, no thanks to Kenneth. Grace sat beside Jason almost every day, reading to him from a children's Bible. Are you my mummy now? He asked one evening. Grace smiled. No, sweetheart. But I'll always be your friend. Clarissa tried to salvage her public image. She paid bloggers to write fake stories, blaming Richard for abandoning her and mistreating the kids. But the truth leaked. One of her former friends exposed her messages with Kenneth to the media. The story went viral. The perfect image of the Benson family shattered online. She tried to run to her ex, but Kenneth had already blocked her. Desperate, Clarissa returned to Richard, begging. I'm sorry. I messed up. Please, forgive me. We can fix this. For the kids. Richard stood at the door. You used me. You used our children. There's nothing to fix. She grabbed his hand, crying. Then Grace came out of the hallway, carrying Jason's medicine. Clarissa paused, glared, and hissed, so this is it? The maid? You're replacing me with a maid. She has more dignity than you ever did, Richard said quietly. Clarissa slapped Grace. Grace gasped but didn't cry. Richard grabbed Clarissa's hand. Leave. Now. That night, Clarissa was driven out of the mansion. With Clarissa gone, peace slowly returned. Grace became more involved with the children, tutoring Chloe in maths, helping Michelle with her anxiety, praying with Ethan, encouraging Daniel to apply for a university scholarship. The children began to smile again. One night, Richard found her in the kitchen, baking banana bread. You do more than clean, he said, watching her work. Grace smiled. I do what I can. You've become the glue holding this house together. She looked up. Not me, sir. God. He smiled. Maybe. But he used you. They sat and talked that night, about childhood, pain, faith, and dreams. Grace told him about losing her parents young, raising her siblings, and eventually working as a maid to survive. Richard was humbled. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. Grace blushed. I'm just a servant. No, he said, staring into her eyes. You're a queen in disguise. 6 months later, on a calm Sunday afternoon, Richard gathered the children in the garden. I want to tell you something. They looked up from their books and phones. He turned to Grace, standing shyly in the corner. This woman. Grace, she walked into our lives quietly, but she's been the light in our darkness. She's helped you, loved you, and stood by me when the truth broke our home. Jason ran and hugged her. She's already family. Richard smiled. I want to make it official. He turned to Grace, knelt down, and held out a simple gold ring. Will you marry me, Grace? The children gasped. Grace covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Sir, are you sure? I've never been more sure in my life. She nodded slowly. Yes. Yes, I will. The children jumped up in joy, hugging her, clapping, crying. And for the first time in a long time, the Benson mansion felt like a real home. The wedding was simple, intimate, and private, just family, a few close friends, and a quiet church. Richard wore a cream agbada with gold embroidery, while Grace looked radiant in an elegant white gown she had sewn herself with help from Michelle and Chloe. The media tried to find out, but Richard made sure it was kept away from the public. He didn't want drama. He just wanted peace. Daniel gave a short speech at the reception. "Dad," he said, "you may not have given us life, but you gave us love. And Grace, thank you for showing us what a real mother looks like." Tears flowed. Richard kissed his new bride on the forehead, whispering, "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for being you." And with that, the Benson family began again. Clarissa was not done. After being evicted and disgraced, she lost everything: friends, money, even her social status. She blamed Richard and Grace for it all. She contacted a local journalist, offering to leak secrets about the Benson family. "I'll expose the maid. I know she used charms," she said bitterly. "She was sleeping with my husband even while I was there." The story hit the blogs. Billionaire marries maid who used juju to destroy family. Scandal, inside the fall of the Benson empire. Grace was heartbroken. Richard tried to sue, but Clarissa had gone into hiding. The children were affected. Daniel got into a fight at school over it, Michelle broke down again, and Chloe became withdrawn. Grace gathered them one night. "I know it hurts," she said gently. "But lies don't win in the end. We'll stand strong, with love and truth." And they did. The storm blew over. The public slowly lost interest, but Richard promised, "If she ever comes near this family again, I'll make sure she faces the law." A year passed. Grace sat in the same kitchen where she used to scrub floors, now with her belly round and glowing. She was 8 months pregnant. Jason climbed into her lap. "Will the baby look like me?" Grace laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe she'll look like your daddy." Richard entered and kissed her forehead. "Or like her beautiful mother." The kids were excited. They helped decorate the nursery, picked names, and took turns feeling the baby kick. When Grace went into labor, Richard rushed her to the hospital. 12 hours later, their daughter was born. They named her Hope Chisatir Benson. "She's our fresh start," Grace whispered, holding the tiny girl close. Richard wept quietly beside her. "A gift I never deserved, but I'll protect her with my life." News of Richard's new family reached Kenneth in Abuja. He was bitter. He saw a photo of Grace holding baby Hope on a blog. Underneath it, someone had commented, "Clarissa left a diamond and Grace picked it up with love." Kenneth smashed his phone. He had lost everything: his 5 children, his secrets were out, and his church attendance dropped. He tried reaching out to Daniel, but Daniel refused. "You were never there when we needed you," he said. "Now we don't need you at all." Michelle blocked him. Ethan and Chloe didn't even remember him. Only Jason, the youngest, sent a drawing to the hospital chaplain, a picture of Richard, Grace, and baby Hope, with a caption, "My real daddy, my new mummy, and our sunshine." Kenneth broke down and wept for the first time in years. Some losses are permanent. Years later, the Benson mansion no longer felt like a museum. It was full of music, laughter, burnt toast, and scattered toys. Hope was now 3, running around the house with Jason. Daniel got a scholarship abroad. Michelle launched a blog on mental health for teens. Ethan wrote stories. Chloe became a dancer. Grace continued managing the house, not as a maid, but as a queen. The staff respected her. The children loved her. Richard adored her. One evening, the family gathered for dinner, no suits, no gowns. Just jollof rice, chicken, and laughter. Richard raised his glass. "To the ones who stayed. To the one who saved us. To Grace." Everyone clapped. As Grace smiled with tears in her eyes, Jason whispered, "Mummy Grace, thank you for loving us." She hugged him tight. "No. Thank you, for giving me the chance." One quiet evening, Chloe approached Grace in the garden. "Mummy Grace," she said softly, "can I ask you something personal?" Grace, weeding her little flower patch, smiled. Of course, dear. Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Like people only remember where you came from, not who you are? Grace paused, then wiped her hands and sat with her. I felt that way every day when I was a maid in this house, she said. Even when I cleaned quietly, I sometimes cried in the bathroom. Chloe looked surprised. But what changed? You, Grace said, placing a hand on her chest. All of you. You gave me something I never had, a family. And slowly, I realized. Home isn't where you start. It's what you build. Chloe hugged her tightly. I want to be like you when I grow up. Grace smiled, eyes full of warmth. You'll be even greater. One morning, a letter arrived at the mansion. No return address. It was from Clarissa. Richard read it alone on the balcony. Richard, you may never forgive me, and that's okay. I've lost everything, status, friends, even the children. But I saw a video online of Grace dancing with baby Hope in the garden. I've never seen you that happy in all the years we were married. Maybe I was the wrong one for you. Maybe Grace was meant to heal what I broke. If you ever tell the kids about me, just tell them. I'm sorry. Clarissa. Richard folded the letter and sat in silence. He didn't tell the children. Not yet. But he prayed, quietly, that she would find peace. It was graduation day. Daniel was finishing his master's in engineering from the University of Manchester. Richard, Grace, and the other kids flew in for the ceremony. When Daniel walked across the stage in his blue gown, Grace's eyes welled with pride. Afterward, he gave a short speech to the class. He said, I grew up thinking life was perfect. Then the truth broke everything. But it also gave me the chance to choose who I wanted to be. I chose love. I chose forgiveness. I chose family. Later that evening, Richard hugged him tightly. I may not have fathered you, but I've never been more proud of a son. Daniel grinned. And I've never been more grateful for a father. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the living room curtains, little Hope, now 6, sat with Richard on the couch. Daddy, she asked innocently, why don't I look like Daniel or Michelle? Richard smiled. He had been waiting for this question for years. Because they came from a different mummy, he said gently. But you all came from the same love. Hope blinked. So, we're not the same. We're different in how we came, Richard said, but not in how we're loved. Hope nodded thoughtfully. Okay. I'll still share my biscuit. He laughed and hugged her tightly. That's all that matters. Grace watched from the hallway, heart full. Years later, the Benson home was a place of peace. Richard and Grace opened a foundation that gave scholarships to housemaids' children and single mothers. They called it the Hopeful Grace Foundation. Jason became a pediatrician. Michelle became a therapist. Chloe opened a dance academy. Ethan wrote novels. Daniel built schools. Hope. She wanted to be a teacher and a singer. She had her mother's warmth and her father's strength. One evening, the whole family sat in the garden under the fairy lights. Music played softly, suya was roasting, and children ran around laughing. Richard stood up, glass of Zobo in hand. I used to think wealth was gold and cars, he said. But wealth is family. And I didn't find it through power. I found it through truth, and grace. Everyone clapped. Grace wiped a tear. That night, under the stars, the once broken family sat together, not perfect, but real. Not defined by blood, but by love. Because in the end, all that glitters isn't gold. But love. Love shines forever. The end. Thank you for watching this powerful story. If you believe love is stronger than blood, and truth will always find the light. Subscribe. Like. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow for more stories that touch the heart and shake the soul. Until next time, remember, not all that glitters is gold. But true love always shines.